That was a famous one a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He put tape across his camera so no one could...
I do that.
No.
Oh, you mean the little...
Yeah.
I put a little post-it note across it.
I always think they would see me typing and they would turn it off after about 2 minutes.
If that's all you do in front of your computer. I'm not saying I do anything worse. Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. Sorry we've been away for a couple of weeks, but Easter and all that, chocolate eggs don't eat themselves. Just to remind you that if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or iTunes, you can watch it on the website or on Facebook, and vice versa. If you're watching it, you can listen to it on SoundCloud or iTunes. This week, looks like light reading, we're still eating their chocolate eggs because it's just me and Jamie this week, so be gentle with me, Jamie. And we are going to talk about the recent 5G spectrum auctions that we had in the UK. We can talk about the ongoing gift that keeps on giving, that is Facebook. And then we're going to finish off with a bit of chat about the pros and cons of sort of big corporate mergers and acquisitions. So I'll start off with the auction one, as I wrote that up. We had 40 megahertz of 2.3 gig spectrum band, and 150 megahertz of 3.4 gig spectrum band. Now, the 2.3 is intended for 4G, and the 3.4 is intended for 5G. So this is being framed as a 5G auction, as the majority of the spectrum was in the 5G area. Long and short of it is that O2, EE, and Vodafone all got a decent chunk of the 5G. 3 got a much smaller chunk of the 5G, and
As
O2,
always.
yeah. Well, we're going to come to that. And O2 got all of the 4G as well. So O2's the winner and 3's the loser. Now, the most interesting thing about this, other than the fact that a lot of money was spent, it was not far short of 1.4 billion quid, which most people are estimating something in the region of sort of a billion max. And it occurs to me, in fact, I'll invite you to chat about this, Jamie, before we get into the individual operators. It occurs to me that the government goes, right, here's the spectrum, we decided we own it, and we decided that the private sector and indirectly consumers, i.e. subscribers of these companies, have to pay us 1.4 billion quid for it, which they just trouser. I mean, there'll be some money that goes on maintaining these licensed airwaves and all that sort of thing, but I don't think it's that expensive, to be honest. So Jamie, what do you think? I find that smarts a little bit. I don't see why the private sector should have to hand over such a big load of money to the public sector just to transmit radio signals. What do you think?
Yeah, but it's not... I mean, from my perspective, and I don't know exactly where all the cash goes to, but you got to look at actually running agencies like Ofcom.
Yeah.
They've got to get the funds from somewhere.
Indeed.
And, if you actually look at the amount that is spent, it's 1.4 billion for 20-year licenses.
Yeah.
So if you take that down year by year, that's what I think did it earlier, £69 million per year. So that is, if I know some of it's going to go back into sort of central governments, but you'd assume, and I would hope, although I'm completely guessing here,
as am I,
the majority of this cash will sit within Ofcom. So, Ofcom has got to fund itself. It's got, Sharon White doesn't come cheap. So it's got to pay all the staff and these monstrous legal bills that they work up every single year.
Yeah.
So £69 million per year will probably go to actually pay for some of that. I don't know what. I mean, I can imagine Ofcom's budget exceeds 69 million.
God, that'd be a lot.
What's their office like? Do they have like chocolate
No,
fountains?
not great.
Yeah. It's sort of, champagne jacuzzis.
It's not. It's nicer than our offices, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's not saying much.
It's like the GSMA one.
Well, yes. But they got all these salaries. How big is the Ofcom organisation? I've got no idea.
I don't know. But point taken. We don't have to get granular. I mean, I if either of us had actually bothered to go and do some sort of exhaustive research on it, we could come up with a more definitive answer. But I doubt it costs 69 million a year to run Ofcom, and if it does, then I want to ask them. I want to see what they're spending it on. But yes, no, that is a good rebuttal when you stretch it out over 20 years. However, I have a counter to that, which is, of course, in that 20-year period, this will not be the only auction.
No, it won't. It won't.
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that the sum total of all the auctions, comes to more like 10 billion quid raised. Then we're looking at about £500 million budget a year, and then you're starting to get a bit like, all right, Sharon, why not have a Pret for lunch every now and then?
10 billion? Do you reckon is there an auction every 2 or 3 years?
I don't know. There might be another really big one. I could be talking rubbish. It could be less than that, but there's bound to be in the next 20 years some more. I mean, we're going to be on in 20 years' time. We're going to be on 7G, man. God knows what stuff they had to dig up.
Oh my god.
So, but anyway, yeah. Point taken. The only area in which I will continue to sort of disagree is I don't think administering all this stuff is that expensive. I think it actually said that money goes to the Treasury.
Our 2018, I mean, this is just reading the top line of an article. Our 2018 annual plan reflects our commitment to provide value for money, and our budget set at £121.7 million.
Okay.
So it's... I just think there's so many things that... Like, I mean, you look at their office, it is going to be expensive. It's not massively flash, but yeah, it's like 2-minute walk away from Southwark Bridge or something like that.
Right.
So bang smack in the central London. I don't know how many employees they have. Quite a few.
They better have quite a few. Either that or some people are driving around in Lamborghinis. Okay, fair enough. I will at least partially stand corrected.
But I do agree with you.
It still seems like a lot of wedge, doesn't it?
Yeah, there is that argument that, the more you charge, the government is shooting itself in the foot. The more you charge them for licenses, the less money they're going to have to actually deploy and roll out
and
the
spend on
infrastructure.
Networks and all that.
But I don't particularly buy that argument because I just think it's,
it's coming out of their profit rather than their just working capital.
Operators are always looking for help. And ways for the government to spend more money so they don't have to. I mean, these are you can't really blame them. They are corporate organisations. What corporate organisation doesn't want to spend less and make more money? It wouldn't be a business.
And one thing I was thinking of, to further sort of undermine my own case, is of course how do they apportion this stuff if not through auction?
Yeah.
They can't just go, whoever puts their hand up first gets some.
Yeah.
So they've got to have some sort of competitive way of doing it. I suppose I'd just like to see not all that money, because in the Ofcom press release it just said that the money goes to HM Treasury. So perhaps indirectly it goes back to Ofcom, but for the time being,
it's
just
in the
put on
government
the pile.
coffers.
I suppose what I'd like, do you know what would be quite cool is if, let's say, 10% of everything that each operator paid for it went straight back to a sort of kickback to subscribers. So, let's say EE drops sort of 300 million on stuff, then that's 30 million that goes back to its however many subscribers, and that would just be a
How
nice
about
little...
they bid less and then they charge less?
Well, but they can't. That's the problem with the auction process, isn't it? Unless they try and rig the auction by collaborating with each other, it will keep going. It's a classic way of measuring supply and demand, isn't it? So yeah, there's all that. But anyway, so that was one tangent from that, and then the other one is 3. So as we've spoken about many times on the pod, and Jamie and I have certainly written about at length, 3 in the build up to this specific auction, 3 was doing a lot of moaning, basically about how much less 4G spectrum it had than everyone else. I think it's just 4G that it was focusing on. Even did little cartoons of Sharon White in a superhero costume for some bizarre reason. And some of it it had a bit of a point. It is the newest entrant to the market, and it seemed to be saying, as a new entrant to the market, you got to give us a little bit of a leg up.
Oh, I don't believe that though.
Well, that's what they're saying. You don't think a new entrant to the market needs a leg up at all?
No, I don't believe. I think that's just an excuse.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the American space, what's the newest entrant to the market there? You got what?
I guess T-Mobile US.
T-Mobile.
They've been there forever though.
Yeah, but they're still quite competitive.
Yeah, getting more so.
And 3, it's not like they turned up last year.
No.
They've been around for quite a while.
Yeah. 10 years at least. I've been with them for like 10 years.
Have you? How do you find them?
I mean, it's the cheapest I
Right.
found, and they were the first ones to do free roaming in most of the European
they were.
countries.
And
why I
that's
went
good
with them.
competition. That's the sort of competition that Jamie's alluding to with T-Mobile US. That's actually trying to.
I mean, I paid
disrupt.
£10 a month. That's really cheap.
You pay £10 a month.
Just for the SIM card, yeah.
Right, and you just go and sort of scrounge your handset off someone.
But yeah, I mean,
I might be
coverage-
upgrading soon. You can have my cast off.
He doesn't need it though. He's got an iPhone X, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I buy because then I can resell it,
Right,
But I mean, they have the
so you just
the
paid
worst
for that
coverage.
iPhone X up front, did you?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what the damage was?
Well,
too personal?
I sold my old one, so it was about 800. Yeah.
Well, that's with a Part X type of thing, Part Exchange.
No. I just sold him back my
okay.
old one. Yeah.
Damn. But then how much, let's say if you resell this X in a year's time, what do you expect to get for it?
In a year's time, well, yeah, probably around 800. Yeah, maybe 750.
Well, you think it will hardly lose any of its value in a year?
Well, that's 25%. It's still.
Right, okay, from $1,000. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're allowing
so
for the Part X.
Yeah.
Okay, but that still holds its value
But I
pretty well.
usually
So
I keep them for like 3-4 years usually. So.
right.
Well, you want it?
No, I'm all right, mate. I haven't got 800 on me right now, anyway. No, but that's a good point about them holding their value, and that regardless of what you think of the devices themselves, if the market if there's a lot of demand for older Apple devices, then fair enough. I should think there's much less demand for an old Samsung.
Yeah, but that's the price though, isn't it? So not many people will pay up front, or they'll do the part
It's
exchange.
just cheaper to do that. I mean, if you save enough, it's much cheaper than paying 30-40 pounds.
Oh yeah,
a month.
I used to do total cost of ownership calculations on stuff, and yeah, it's basically
about 20% more.
Yeah, getting it on a contract is definitely quite expensive sort of financing.
Yeah.
Basically, I do it anyway because
Really?
I'm lazy. Yeah. Well, I also get them for the family, and it's just
Right,
easier
right.
just to get it all done.
Yeah.
So yes, 3. So yes, you say they don't need a leg up. I mean, I think the barriers to entry are quite high. The costs building out a network, buying spectrum, and all that sort of thing. And if, as a regulator, you're going to say we definitely want 4, and the business case for being the 4th from a standing start is quite difficult. And I think there's a precedent for this. I think Free Mobile in France got a bit of a leg up. 3 here got a bit of a leg up. But I'm with you, Jamie. I think they've had their leg up, and they seem to be moaning. And I've spoken to 3 about this, and they don't agree with this. I'll say for the record, I've stated this exact case to a 3 representative, and he didn't agree. But anyway, he probably wouldn't. But I think they've had their leg up, and they're basically moaning that they want more of a leg up. And we have sort of limited sympathy for that. And the other thing, I've spoken to other people at other operators who, again, they're not objective, they're not neutral, but they just say, well, why didn't you bid higher in previous auctions? And then in this current auction, they've gone and won half the amount of anyone else, which implies that they weren't prepared to bid higher.
But that's because they charge so little.
Yeah,
People
so
like me.
so again, conversations I've had with 3 have said, the business case doesn't support paying over a certain threshold. Well, I think there comes a point, and I wonder if this is, where you're coming from, Jamie, where the owner, which is Hutchison, which is this sort of minted family over in
Irish.
Hong Kong. No, it's
Oh.
not.
No.
Isn't it Irish
Hong
company?
Kong they're based in.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Hutchison 3G.
Yeah, well, but there's Hutchison, they're a conglomerate. They do Hutchison all sorts of bits and bobs, don't they? Anyway, they're not short of a quid or 2. They should just chuck some money at the UK and go, all right then, go and buy your way to a stronger spectrum position.
Well, this is the mentality they have, because there was reports, I can't remember what his name is, but the CEO of the Hutchison Group, there was reports that he was sort of rubbing shoulders with the UK PM, I think it was Theresa May at the time, and trying to say, give us a bit more of a hand,
bit of lobbying.
and I think that's the
Play the
way.
underdog.
Yeah, I think that's the way they do business, and as far as I'm concerned, I got zero sympathy for it.
Yeah.
If they're perfectly happy to buy all these expensive advertising campaigns, but they're not
Draw
willing to fork
cartoons
out
of the regulator.
Yeah, but they're not willing to fork out for the actual spectrum itself, then that's their own fault.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other point they made, where they slightly contradicted their previous position, was but we're sorted for 5G, because they bought the company called UK Broadband about a year ago and got a whole ton of 3.4 to 3.8 spectrum.
Yeah,
and if you add that onto it, they're actually in quite a decent position. They've got about a quarter.
From a 5G perspective.
But just for 5G.
Yeah.
And they were going, we're right for 5G. And I was like, well, if you're all right for 5G, then why have you been moaning about 4G for the last 2 years?
Well, I mean, that's the
both ways,
baffling
lads.
thing. I mean, like 4G and 5G are going to live alongside each other. And I mean, 5G isn't going to be ubiquitous until, 2025, 2030?
Yeah, it certainly won't be standalone.
Yeah.
There'll be such a huge gap, though. 3G and 4G was like, it's a little bit faster.
No, so the way
from 4G to 5G.
the data transmission was quite big.
Huge gap.
Huge. Yeah.
But over the next 10 years, 4G and 5G are going to sort of like coexist.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be a seamless transition from you moving from your 4G signal through to 5G and then back and then in theory onto the new Wi-Fi that's out there.
I mean, in lots of the country, I don't think they'll ever have.
There'll be like one
5G
square
coverage,
in London
not
with 5G.
Yeah, because if you're using higher frequency spectrum, it's got shorter range anyway, and it's just not going to be viable to build out these sort of little mini base stations and small cells absolutely everywhere. So yes, there's all that. So that was that. I thought that was interesting. Nice to have it out of the way, and now they've all got this new spectrum to go and play with and give us lots of yummy 5G and all that jazz. So
I mean, in their defense, if you live in London or any big city in the UK, there's no issue with 3. It is cheaper than the other ones. Obviously, if you live outside, then you might want to go with someone else. But
I mean, I've spoken to a few people that have just said, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want cheap coverage and you want unlimited data,
absolutely,
you have to put up with the idea that it's just the network isn't as good as the
or as extensive
the others.
I mean, there was another little story I wrote today. A company called OpenSignal does sort of metrics about the sort of UK network situation, and in terms of 4G coverage, 3's miles behind the other 3. So I think that's probably where you were saying for London, it's all groovy, but if you live out and
anywhere else, even your smaller city like Brighton, that's
right. Yeah. So so that's the thing there. But yeah, I used to subscribe. In fact, I still do. For my daughter, subscribe to 3 because you can get these tariffs where it's not time limited. Mm-hmm. So you stick 20 quid on it, and it's until you actually use up that amount of service rather than time runs out, which is perfect for a kid that's hardly ever going to make phone calls, but you want them to have the option. So yes, okay. Jamie, it's just, I mean, the last few weeks, I think when we last did a podcast 2 weeks ago, we were talking a fair bit about Facebook, and it's still bubbling away. So why don't you tell us about the latest stuff you've been finding out?
So it was basically this morning or last night. There was just a sort of it was a sort of a bear all from Zuckerberg, who decided to bring in some sort of various journalists from the sort of the more consumer orientated titles, and sort of each of them got one question. And some of them were good, some of them were bad, and it was basically we're gonna say everything that's wrong,
right? And
we're gonna spin it as a PR exercise.
And did you get the impression it was quite choreographed, or do you think it was really gloves off and they could have asked, what's your favourite sexual position or something if they wanted to?
No, they. I mean, to be honest, I don't think Zuckerberg really knew what was coming, because there was one question where I can't remember what his name is, but the chap from the FT, and he turned around and said, "Do you think the board is discussing whether you're the right person to lead the company anymore?" And Zuckerberg's response was, "Not that I'm aware of." And then it moved on to the next question. And it was just like,
but you got the impression that he wasn't necessarily one that he'd crafted an answer to.
I don't think he was really prepared for that one.
He's always like that, though.
Yeah.
When he's asked
but a lot of it was quite extensive. So he was actually like a lot of it. That was the one where he was just like, "No, move on."
Do you remember the hoodie interview where he was sweating? And they're like, "You can take off your hoodie." And he's like, "No, I'm good." And then 2 minutes later, he's like, "Maybe I'll take off the hoodie." When they asked him about privacy, he just like melted away.
I mean, the guy. He's a complete contradiction in himself. We were talking about it earlier that the basic premise of the Facebook model is that the users are as open as possible, so the Facebook platform can adapt its advertising solutions and offer you more personalised adverts. But this is entirely dependent on you being completely transparent with your influences, with your life, with your likes. But at the same time, Zuckerberg is a very private individual. He never does mainstream interviews. whenever he does sort of reach out to the general public, it's through a controlled environment.
Yeah.
It's through.
And even then, he looks like a rabbit in the headlights half the time.
Yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah. And it's well, the only time
Sweating.
he really talks is like at developer conferences and all
Right.
that sort of thing. Or, it's very, very controlled PR stunts. He never,
Yeah.
for someone who's that influential, he very rarely appears on mainstream media. And then to tie it up, his house. He bought vacant plots around his house to increase his privacy.
Right. And he's got sort of moats with
Isn't
snapping
there,
crocodiles.
isn't there a
in it.
picture of him with his laptop and he's got tape over his camera?
Yes, yeah, that was a famous one a couple
Yeah.
of years ago.
Yeah.
He put tape across his camera so no one could.
I do that.
No.
Oh, you mean the little?
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a little post-it note across it.
I always think they would see me typing and they would turn it off after about 2 minutes.
If that's all you do in front of your computer, and I'm not saying I do anything worse. There's an episode of Black Mirror
They would get really bored.
where I won't get into the details, but some lad is doing something he shouldn't be doing in front of his computer.
I mean, I close it when I'm not using it.
and someone's hacked his webcam, and then they use that footage to blackmail him.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I mean, it's doable, but I mean, it's a complete contradiction, and it's very much a case of do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
I want to. Sorry, am I central now?
Yeah.
Leaning out of shot over here.
Oh no, you just jog that camera now.
No, it's
all right, isn't it? Yeah, there's very much a case of do what I say, not what I do. And I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
part of what Facebook did today, I'm okay with. They turned around and they took ownership of some of the things, and they said, "Look, we should have taken our responsibilities more seriously. We should have been auditing developers and controlling the amount of information that they can access better. There's this thing called profile scraping, which they said we should have adjusted that.
Yeah.
We've rewritten our APIs to prevent to sort of limit the information which developers can get from your profile and your likes. And they said we're doing all this stuff now, but it was a PR exercise. Let's not forget. Facebook is not innocent here. It should still be punished.
Yeah.
This is even if it didn't know what Cambridge Analytica was doing, this is gross negligence.
Well, the mere fact that it let that guy Alexander Corgan put in that questionnaire and have the and it said it got rid of it 4 or 5 years ago, but that it allowed people to not just get information from those who filled in the questionnaire, but from their friends as well, and thus establish this network effect.
Yeah,
was the original scandal. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, how the hell is that possible? And Facebook's first defence was, yeah, fair enough, but we don't do that anymore. But your point is, well, but they did.
They did.
They thought it was all right
should
back
get
then.
punished. I mean, this is the complicated thing, and this is where Facebook should be punished because they knew that it was going on in 2015, and they should have told someone about it, and they didn't. They covered it up for 3 years.
Yeah.
But I have got a little bit of sympathy because this is the internet. I mean, if you think of the actual internet as we know it, it's what, like 23, 24 years old. It was only early 90s that it became mainstream. So you think of the actual the sort of the power of the internet. We're still exploring
still early
the dark
days.
corners.
And we're certainly early days when it comes to regulation and rules and all that.
But my point is, like, Facebook has gone out and tried something which no one else has done. So it's all well and good looking back and saying, "Oh, you naughty boy, you can't do that." But the line of right and wrong wasn't drawn.
Yeah, I agree.
They were exploring new areas, and occasionally you go too far, and they should have taken ownership of that. But you can't really punish someone for exploring new
Well, not
ideas.
excessively. I mean, it's a lot of it's just down to the degree of punishment.
Yeah.
Someone screws up, you highlight their screw up, but you don't sort of send them to prison for the rest of their lives.
No.
It really does depend on the extent of the crime. And I completely agree with you on that, Jamie. Kind of ruining this. We're supposed to be with the two. We're supposed to be having a go at each other here, but we're.
Are they being punished by advertisers already?
Well, yeah, a little bit, and their share price is certainly being punished. But I think their share price is largely being punished because they can no longer exploit our data to the extent that they used to. I reckon it's just cold calculating investors going, okay, that gig's up.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Jamie. I think, and I would extend this to social media on the whole, because Twitter's going through a similar process right now. It just hasn't hit as big a scandal as this one. But Twitter set itself up as the ultimate sort of free speech platform. Anything goes. Let the platform police itself. And and I personally am a big fan of as much unfettered free speech as possible. I mean, there has to be some kind of ceiling. There are laws against incitement to violence and that sort of thing. But other than that, if someone says something really out of order but not illegal, then that should stand, and then everyone else should just tell them how out of order they are. That's how free speech works, as far as I'm concerned. If you start saying people can't say stuff, those bad ideas don't go away. They just get driven underground. Anyway, and so that's the thinking behind things like Twitter. But now they're coming under increased pressure to sort of ban people. They're banning, there's a lot of high-profile sort of right-wingers like Tommy Robinson who got banned. But there's people on the other side of the fence as well. It's just they're starting to err on the side of caution in terms of if anything looks a bit dodgy, it gets banned. And then we get into other, even more dodgy areas, such that I'm not going to explicitly talk about them. They're so dodgy. But you can all imagine where you're talking about belief systems. And are they sacred? Should people be allowed to fully explore belief systems or not? And if so, which belief systems are untouchable and which aren't, and so on and so on and so on. And I don't have answers to any of these, but the trend seems to be for platforms like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube to become more censorious. And I, in principle, disagree with that, but I understand where it's coming from. And part of it is, as you described, Jamie, they've tried the completely unregulated, unfettered approach, and it's blowing up in their faces now.
But I think there does need to be some sort of censorship over there, because, and I fully believe in free speech, and I tell you what, if you had an open source platform where no one was profiting from it, I would be completely open to no censorship whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if Facebook and Twitter are going to profit off their platform, and governments want to hold them accountable for what's on their platform, Facebook has to show some censorship over it. It can't. I mean, at the moment, it's in some middle ground where it's turning around and saying, and the governments are saying, you need to get control on your platform. You need to control hate speech and misinformation and all that. And Facebook and Twitter are going, whoa, hold on a second. This isn't our responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a free speech platform. So it's creating this void of zero responsibility. So you either need to have for free speech, you need to have some sort of completely independent platform where no one profits off it, and therefore there can be some independent body which runs it. But if you're asking for profit and governments need to point the finger at someone to get control, Facebook needs to exercise some sort of censorship.
Fair enough. And the profit side of things also affects their self-censorship. For example, YouTube's probably the most extreme example of this. It started demonetizing a lot of perfectly mainstream, moderate people because about a year or so ago, some advertisers started finding their ads next to some pretty dodgy videos. And they went mental, and then YouTube kind of, I think in my opinion, overreacted, and now they're erring on the side of caution, and anything that might upset our precious advertisers will just demonetize it. So yes, they get their censorship pressure both from regulators and governments and that side of things, the public sector side of things, and there's censorship pressure from their advertisers, and that's all understood.
I mean, the two worlds don't. Freedom of speech, or free speech, complete free speech, may I add, and government guidelines and advertiser restrictions. Those two pockets cannot exist simultaneously.
But the flip side is free speech is what encourages third-party producers to upload stuff for free. So we've got for Telecoms.com, we've got you and me, Jamie, and obviously we're incredibly expensive. But imagine, if we had this army of people writing what we consider to be an acceptable level of content for free and just whacking it out there. Me and Jamie could spend all day in the pub. So I think if you censor too much, then people are going to just stop making YouTube videos or posting or sharing stuff on Facebook and all that sort of thing. But that leads us to another topic on this area, Jamie, that we've touched on a little bit, which I'd like to talk about again, is what is a social media platform. So maybe it's in its inception, it was just a notice board, literally an electronic notice board. No one holds the notice board itself culpable for what people pin up on it. And now from what we've just discussed, we're exploring the limits of that, saying we're just a notice board, especially, as Jamie says, when they're profiting from all the notices that are posted up on the notice board. So maybe it's not enough just to say they're this passive portal, this mere notice board for other people's stuff. On the flip side, they're not a publisher like Telecoms.com. There isn't the quality control that is over me and Jamie, that we're going to have to write a certain quality of stuff, or we're going to lose viewers, and our whole business model will get screwed. So there's somewhere in the middle. And I think, Jamie, I'll hand it over to you. You were mulling over the sort of the concept of what did you say, aggregator or something like that?
Curator.
There we go. Tell us a bit more about that.
So it's down to the basic idea that where we are now is not the same place as where we were in the mid-90s. And you've got to look at the majority of regulation that is being built today, regulation and legislation, is built on top of precedents which was set and written in the mid-90s. Now, that for me is fundamentally flawed, because that basically says that Facebook should be a publisher, or it should be a complete, for it to exercise some sort of control over content, it would have to be a publisher, and governments want it to exercise some sort of control over its content. But that's trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, or other way around, whichever
because
way
it can't. If it's letting third parties that are unvetted put stuff up, how can you call it a publisher? We don't just let anyone put any else. Even our comments, we can keep an eye on, can't we?
Yeah. So basically, what we're trying to do at the moment is force these online social media platforms into a structure which was built for the analog world, and that is just not going to work. It's not going to allow the internet to thrive and for new ideas to be explored. So I mean, there has to be this new grey area created, where you have an online platform which acts as a curator of content and sort of moves the audience to relevant ideas and relevant pieces of content, but cannot be held accountable in terms of the sort of the quality control.
As long as they're showing some degree of an attempt to keep the real nutcases under control.
But then at the same time, I mean, this takes it onto a completely to a new area, which is about offence.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also subjective, isn't it?
It's so subjective. Who becomes offended by what?
And who determines who's a nutcase?
Should my morals be imposed on the wider community? Because, quite frankly, I hate guns. Right. I absolutely hate guns. Whenever I'm in the States, I'm incredibly nervous when I see people on open carry.
Packing.
Even around London, like when I see armed police officers, I'm still nervous around them. Which I think
it's
is
a good thing to be
reasonable.
nervous about. Yeah, it's not irrational.
So for me, I'd get rid of guns, but then at the same time, that's my moral standing and that's my belief. But then 50% of America would be completely agree with me, and would. Be you can see the violence which is going on about the Second Amendment there at the moment. It's it's an incredibly difficult position that a regional neutral platform has to keep everyone happy, obey and abide by local laws, but then at the same time, not all local laws are even consistent around the world. It's trying to make them publishers is wrong, and just
but saying that they're completely
work.
Passive is wrong as well.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe technology. Maybe something like to sort of name drop technology. Maybe something along the lines of blockchain can work, where you get like Wikipedia on steroids, where everything's just being constantly sort of tweaked and edited and adjusted and that sort of thing. I've got a feeling technology is going to have to. I mean, obviously law and regulation is going to have to play a part, but maybe technology, because there's no way. I didn't see how it would be viable for Facebook or Twitter to employ enough permanent moderators in real time to keep an eye on what everyone's saying all the time, and to make perfect judgment calls each time. So maybe it does need some kind of clever technology.
Do you say we're in a post-truth society now?
Well, that's been a phrase that's come around, but I think that's more in the sort of fake news side of thing. I think it's something that gets chucked at Trump a lot because he'll just tweet out random stuff that suits him. Like one thing that cracks me up, just to go on a complete Trump tangent, he's got it in for all the media. Until someone writes something nice about Trump, and then he's retweeting it like mad, going, this is some quality journalism right there. So, it's pretty selective. In fact, Trump is a classic example of what Jamie's talking about. How if you just leave everything in the hands of one person, they're going to make very subjective, flawed decisions, which is one of the reasons why so many Americans are getting in a flap about the Trumpmeister being in charge.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, it's just a completely different.
Yeah.
Oh, where to go with that one, I don't know.
But as an illustration of subjectivity, that's the only reason I bring it up. I certainly don't want to go down that whole US politics rabbit hole, that's for sure. Okay, on that, that's probably...
As most of our listeners are from the US, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And just Jamie talking about guns. I mean, guns are massively politicised at the moment following all that stuff. So, yeah, God knows. You could do it all day. And I've been using Twitter a bit more recently, and mainly in a passive capacity. And Jesus Christ, just within seconds of something happening, everyone just adopts these adversarial positions and they just kick off. And it just goes crazy so quickly.
Very nicely covered by Ricky Gervais in his latest stand-up comedy.
Yeah,
he makes it really funny, actually.
Yeah, he does. I watched that the other day.
Whole Twitter thing,
Yeah, well, he's quite into freedom of speech. He speaks up about it quite a lot. One other one on that tangent that I watched, as far as Netflix comedy specials goes, is Chris Rock's. If you haven't watched that, I really recommend it. It's quality stuff. Nice. He's a very funny guy. Okay, I think we've done that one. Last one, before we call it a day. There's been a couple of stories this week concerning M&A, mergers and acquisitions, with big US tech companies. There's one that I covered a day or two ago about Intel selling its Wind River division. And I remember, I've been a tech hack long enough to remember when they bought them. And I got to admit that when they bought them, I didn't even know what Wind River was. And I quickly ran off to find out what they do, and it was embedded software. This was 2009, and the significance of embedded software then wasn't so obvious as it is now in the era of mobile phones, wearables, IoT, all that sort of thing. And so that was Intel's attempt to buy its way into a bit of diversification. It had been struggling in mobile for a long time. It had been trying to make mobile chips to take on ARM-based ones like Qualcomm Snapdragon and all that sort of thing, and largely failing. But it kept rolling the dice, and it makes so much money out of its PC and server chips that it can afford to make some quite expensive mistakes. But that's an example of trying to M&A to try and buy your way into diversification. And on the flip side of this, I'll hand it over to you, Jamie. You just wrote a story today about Microsoft investing in IoT, but Microsoft seems to be reinventing itself now, having done lots of catastrophic M&A, not least buying Nokia's handset division and then basically flushing it down the bog in about 5 years. But now it seems to be doing it in a slightly more organic, more sort of clever way, Jamie. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Nadella's up to?
Yeah, Nadella. I mean, he's just. He's transformed that business. I mean, you had Windows go through that 15-year, 20-year period of absolute
money.
Dominance when the PC was king. But then the PC didn't, goes into decline, and all of a sudden Microsoft loses this absolute fantastic position it's in. And then Nadella comes along and transforms it into a cloud computing business. And I think it's just, what he's done is absolutely incredible. I mean, I know he's not the most exciting person to listen to when he's talk, but I mean, this guy has the finger on the technology world, and he's really, really measuring where it's going. And everyone could see cloud computing was going to be a big thing. Yeah. But it was it was Amazon who got there first.
Certainly in terms of the actual sort of kit
sort of stuff. Yeah. So they got there first. Then you probably had Microsoft coming in second, and Google, and then IBM started making noise,
Oracles,
and Joyent and Oracles.
A bit late to the game.
Oracle late to the game again. But but you just had he was there, and he sort of developed this cloud computing platform, which is formed the foundation of the next generation of Microsoft. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I was speaking to someone about this a couple of days ago who shall remain nameless, it wouldn't surprise me if cloud computing forms the basic sort of principle of Microsoft. Then they build all their AI and their sort of Office sort of applications on top of it, and it wouldn't surprise me too long if they just go like the Windows Phone to Windows operating the consumer software side of things as well.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's still some value in it, they'll keep it going. But there are still quite a few PCs sold, but there's certainly no growth in it. So you just keep it ticking along, and that's all fine. And the other big cash cow for Microsoft always used to be Office, and the sort of software as a service era. Again, moving away from people spending like 500 quid on box software, and people expecting this stuff. I mean, I can get Office on my phone without paying for it at all. I can open Office Docs on my Android phone, no problem. So yes, I think you're right, Jamie. I think they'll let it just tick along, but they won't really invest in it. And the story you wrote today was about sort of 5 billion they're putting into IoT specifically.
Yeah,
is that right?
So I mean, this is so I didn't actually get to my point. Sorry. But
you're in time, mate.
So with this cloud computing platform sort of positioning, they got ahead of the trend, and now you're starting to see they're sort of like investing heavily on the intelligent edge. Now, I mean, mobile edge computing was something that was spoken about a couple of years ago, and I think it's going to be sort of critically important.
Yeah.
But it is, it died off a little bit over the last couple of years. The buzz around it, there was, but I think mainly because for edge computing to be critical, you need the catalyst of 5G and IoT, and it's only now we're starting to get to the point where these sort of overarching trends are sort of fueling the buzz in the little ones below, and this is just sort of Nadella again keeping an eye on what's going on and just saying, edge computing, that's going to be massive before too long. So let's move our intelligence out of the core and onto the edge, and let's offer this as a service. Get us ahead, first to market. And we're going to be immensely successful.
Invest and just build out infrastructure.
Yeah,
like we're always sort of moaning on at telcos to do more in terms of telecommunications infrastructure.
Yeah.
People like Amazon and Microsoft will just build an absolute ton of data center capacity, and then worry about what to do with it later. It's that more entrepreneurial, invest first and don't necessarily look for a sure thing.
It's just the internet players, Google's doing exactly the same. I mean, a couple of days ago, you got the JSA or the JSG.
Oh, is it that
subsea cable?
Yeah. And that's just for its own purposes primarily, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they'll sell their, it's their cloud for their cloud customers as well. But then at the same time, you look at if you don't have good cloud connectivity and sort of like low latency everywhere. The basic Google advertising business model doesn't work. How many people are going to use Google Maps if they take God knows how long to load up?
Indeed.
It's
And
fueling.
that's why Facebook gets involved in sort of connectivity as
exactly.
well. Yeah.
So that is an excellent idea or example of organic growth.
Exactly.
Microsoft completely redefining the business with an eye on sort of 10 years down the line. And Nadella's been there for what now? 6 years, 5-6 years
in the top spot. Yeah,
and it's been going.
And he's such a contrast in every way to his predecessor Steve Ballmer, who was this sales guy, this loud, larger than life, very loud, very sort of evangelical figure. And clearly, what they needed was more of a sort of technocrat to just sit there quietly behind the scenes, making everything a bit better. Yeah. And I think back to the point I said at the start about organic.
Although Ballmer was very noughties America, wasn't he? That every massive organisation in the States had this very charismatic, loud CEO. Even bloody what do you call it? Oracle had changed their tune a little bit,
buying Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah,
right. Who did that?
What's his name?
Larry Ellison, Oracle guy.
Yeah.
But he's stepped back now, isn't he? He's executive chairman and CTO, and then we've got Safra Katz and Mark
Hurd
as
he used to be at HP
co-CEOs.
That's right. Yeah, Safra Katz. That's a great name.
Yeah, I know.
I wonder, Pierre, whether there's a precedent for jump cutting YouTube clips into these videos, because I think getting that Barmer going,
I think I know which one you're talking about.
the crazy monkey boy dance.
Okay, we'll show it now.
There you go.
It might be just audio.
Let's see how it goes. And I actually don't know how it works in terms of copyright as well. Anyway, that's your problem. If we get sued, I'm pointing the finger at you. It wasn't my idea.
But there are, so that's complete organic growth. But then you look at the masters, like you said, buy into diversify doesn't work.
Doesn't seem to. I mean, I'm sure there are a few exceptions, but Intel has so much M&A that I've been aware of that Intel's done over the last decade or so hasn't worked. Same goes for Microsoft. They pretty much wrote off all of the Nokia acquisition. They wrote off this massive sort of advertising company they bought about 20 years ago, wrote off the whole value of it. Enormous loss of shareholder capital. You look at, Ericsson's been trying to get out of this sort of TV transmission thing that it bought into a while ago. There are so many examples. Cisco, about 10 years ago, went on a crazy spending spree, and half of those things don't seem to have come off. There's so many examples of these companies going, right, this is our new strategic direction. What company can we buy that will take us there? But it's so much more complicated than that, because you've got to integrate them. There's cultural differences. There's legacy IT differences. There's so many things that stand in the way of that going well.
That's probably why Apple is sitting on so many billions, because they're waiting.
They've never really done. I mean, and the M&A they've done has been quite little. Like they bought a company called PA Semi about 10 years ago, and now they make their own processors for their phones.
Well, same thing for Beats. They're about to make their own headphones, actually.
I can think of two examples where acquisition to diversify works incredibly well. Google,
YouTube,
DeepMind.
Yeah.
AI powers every aspect of their business now. They bought
DeepMind. That was really cheap.
500 million.
YouTube was expensive.
Yeah, at the time. It was expensive at the time. It's one of the biggest bits of tech M&A.
You look at this now. I mean, they spent 2.4 billion. What was it? It was 1.9 billion or something like that for YouTube, and 500 million for DeepMind. Do you think 2.4 billion for two businesses which are redefining their business? You think, wow, that's some business.
Facebook and Instagram, was that your next one?
No. IBM.
WhatsApp.
Oh
no. Wait, did they? I don't think they got.
WhatsApp's Facebook.
WhatsApp Facebook bought it for 19 billion though, didn't they?
Yeah, they dropped a chunk of change on that.
But IBM and Watson.
Yeah.
They bought that.
So there's two AI acquisitions that have gone well. Maybe there we are. That's your AI acquisitions generally good.
But YouTube was,
Yeah, so I was thinking
video
YouTube.
platform.
It seemed, one thing while you were saying that, I was mulling over a way to sort of try and work out why these things work and they don't, and I'm sure it's not as simple as this, but I suppose it's how adjacent they are to your core competence. YouTube, while Google wasn't in the business of hosting video, it was in the business of making money off internet traffic. That's what it does, isn't it? And so I suppose in hindsight it figured, if we can make money off search traffic, why can't we make money off video traffic?
But I think perhaps the most important aspect of these acquisitions is that they weren't expected to perform immediately.
Yeah.
Like YouTube, they invested in YouTube with and how long were you watching free videos for before they actually started making
and they had
any
lawsuits
money?
against them, because as soon as they bought them, all the musicians and stuff were going, right, now we've got someone worth suing.
So they got, they invested with a very long-term ambition. With IBM, they invested in Watson, and then all of a sudden, it's only this last quarter, I think they turned around their 23rd straight quarterly loss.
That's it. Yeah.
So not quarterly loss, quarterly decline in revenues.
That's it.
And this latest quarter was an actual year-on-year improvement.
Right.
So they actually, they went 5-6 years of going down a steep slope, where they were still reliant on sort of legacy materials and legacy businesses, and they gradually moved over and improved their strategic imperatives year on year on year.
Sometimes these things take time.
Yeah, it's eye on the long-term prize, and those are two big companies three, Microsoft and IBM, two massive companies which have pulled themselves out of a ditch, but they didn't do it overnight. And Intel, like the McAfee acquisition, 7 billion at the time.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Sold it for what?
Did they sell it? That's quite recently, wasn't it?
It's gone. Yeah, to private investor now.
That's happening quite a lot. there's a hell of a lot of private money coming into this stuff, and I think that's an interesting point.
Or venture capitalists, rather.
Yeah,
than
VCs,
investor.
private equity. I'm never quite sure what the difference is, but I completely agree with you about the long-termist versus short-termist. And you get the impression that public stock markets are all just manically short-termist, and you get the impression that anyone who's the CEO or a chairman of a public company is just constantly shitting themselves about the next quarter's numbers and the next quarter's share price. And if you're just worried quarter on quarter, year on year, how can you have a long-term strategy? So I think CEOs probably need to get a bit better at going to the city and go chill.
This is why I think McAfee's going to be, security is the next big thing. We've been saying that
for a while,
saying that for ages, but
yeah, it's not going to go away, especially not with IoT and all that.
Well, with IoT, you're opening billions of gateways and billions of portals into the network.
You think we've had our data violated now?
Yeah. But so like McAfee, it's now in the hands of a venture capitalist, and generally venture capitalists don't give a shit about quarter on quarter.
Yeah,
they buy for the 3 to 10 year profits.
For the exit after however much time their business plan says. Yeah.
So McAfee has got, let's say, 3 to 5 years to sort itself out and put it in a really strong position before venture capitalists either go public or they offload it to one of the technology sort of superpowers in the world. So I think McAfee could be a very, very strong company over the next couple of years.
People still use that. Like, as a Mac user, I cannot even imagine like installing an antivirus.
But I think a lot of it is like corporate subscriptions now and all that sort of thing.
Does it even work? Like he himself, presumably. John McAfee even said himself, like, it's just ads.
But don't forget, like,
a lot of it does something.
But a lot of
I think we use it here, by the way, so I wouldn't slag it off too much.
But a lot of what it is for us in our day-to-day lives is the free software that gives you a very basic level of protection, and then you get better stuff after you upgrade. But then these security companies make the majority of their money by saying, okay, you've got Informer, you've got, how many employees we got? 7,000. You've got 7,000 users here. We will provide enterprise level security for those 7,000 users plus all the temporary machines that you use. I think that's where they make a huge amount of cash.
Much more than in the sort of ad hoc consumer. I think you're probably right. But so anyway, so to sort of conclude all that, I think we all agree that long-termism, we'd like to see a bit more of it. I certainly would anyway.
100%.
And I think that maybe, sometimes the VC types, the private equity types show the way forward. But yes, I agree that, Microsoft reinventing itself has to be done organically rather than by M&A. And I think on the whole, these are organic. But yes, there are definitely exceptions where the M&A's gone well, and YouTube definitely jumps out as one. Cool. I think we've done sort of not far short of an hour there, so may well call it a day there. So thanks a lot, guys, and thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you join us for the next one.